Many studies looking exclusively at the influence of variations in father love deal with two topics. A. Gender role development, Fish and Biller, 1973, Green, 1982, Huttenen, 1992, Millen Roll, 1997, Musser and Fleck, 1983, and B. Father involvement, Amato and Rivera, 1999, Biller, 1993, K.N. Harris, Furstenberg, and Marmer, 1998, Radin, 1981. Studies of gender role development emerged prominently in the 1940s and continued through the 1970s, Lamb, 1997, 2000. This was a time when fathers were considered to be especially important as gender role models for sons. Commonly, researchers assessed the masculinity of fathers and of sons and then correlated the two sets of scores. Many behavioral scientists were surprised to discover that no consistent results emerged from this research until they examined the quality of the father-son relationship. Then they found that, when the relationship between masculine fathers and their sons was warm and loving, the boys were indeed more masculine. Later, however, researchers found that the masculinity of fathers per se did not seem to make much difference after all. Point 2 as summarized by Lamb, 1997. Boys seemed to conform to the sex role standards of their culture when their relationships with their fathers were warm, regardless of how masculine the fathers were, even though warmth and intimacy have traditionally been seen as feminine characteristics. A similar conclusion was suggested by research on other aspects of psychosocial adjustment and on achievement. Paternal warmth or closeness appeared beneficial, whereas paternal masculinity appeared irrelevant. The second domain in which a substantial amount of research has been done on the influence of variations in father love deals with father involvement, that is, with the amount of time that fathers spend with their children, engagement, the extent to which fathers make themselves available to their children, accessibility, and the extent to which they take responsibility for their children's care and welfare. Responsibility. Lamb, Fleck, Chernov, and Levine, 1987. Many studies conclude that children with highly involved fathers, in relation to children with less involved fathers, tend to be more cognitively and socially competent, less inclined toward gender stereotyping, more empathic, and psychologically better adjusted. Biller, 1981, 1993, Easterbrooks and Goldberg, 1984, Lamb, 1997, J.H. Fleck, 1997, Radin, 1981, Radin and Russell, 1983, Radin and Sagi, 1982. Radin, Williams, and Coggins, 1993, Reuter and Biller, 1973, E. Williams and Radin, 1993, S. Williams and Finley, 1997. Commonly, these studies investigate both paternal warmth and paternal involvement and find, using simple correlations, that the two variables are related to each other and to youth outcomes. It is unclear from these studies whether involvement and warmth make independent or joint contributions to youth outcomes. Moreover, caring for children is not necessarily the same thing as caring about them. Indeed, Lamb, 1997, concluded from his review of studies of paternal involvement that it was not the simple fact of paternal engagement, i.e., direct interaction with the child, availability, or responsibility for childcare that was associated with these outcomes. Rather, it appears that the quality of the father-child relationship made the greatest difference. Cabrera et al. 2000, Lamb, 1997. J.H. Fleck, 1997, reiterated this conclusion when he wrote, "The critical question is, how good is the evidence that fathers' amount of involvement, without taking into account its content and quality, is consequential for children, mothers, or fathers themselves? The associations with desirable outcomes found in much research are actually with positive forms of paternal involvement, not involvement per se. Involvement needs to be combined with qualitative dimensions of paternal behavior through the concept of positive paternal involvement developed here." Pages 66-67. Research by Veneziano and Rona, 1998, supports these conclusions. In a biracial sample of 63 African American and European American children, the authors found from multiple regression analyses that father involvement by itself was associated with children's psychological adjustment primarily insofar as it was perceived by youths to be an expression of paternal warmth, acceptance. These results varied by ethnicity, however. In the European American families, father's loving acceptance significantly mediated, Barron and Henney, 1986, the way offspring experienced their father's involvement. In the African American families, however, father involvement made no significant contribution to youth's psychological adjustment, but perceived paternal warmth, acceptance, did. Neither parenting nor youth's psychological adjustment varied significantly, however, by social class. Further evidence in support of Fleck's conclusion about the importance of paternal warmth versus levels of paternal involvement is shown in Veneziano's 1998 cross-cultural comparative holocultural study. Using multiple regression analysis in a sample of 32 societies representing the world's known and adequately described sociocultural systems, he found that a lack of paternal warmth, not the amount of time that fathers were involved with children, predicted young males' interpersonal violence. Finally, Amato and Gilbreth's 1999 meta-analysis of 63 studies that explored the relationship between non-residential fathering and children's well-being showed that paternal encouragement, support, and closeness were more predictive of youth's social, emotional, and psychological well-being than the frequency of contact between children and the non-resident fathers.